Okay, good. Let's move to questions here. Anyone have a question or a comment? Lee?
As a former chemistry teacher, I'm curious to know how, as you advanced from beginning to intermediate up to the advanced level chemistry classes, how it is you can communicate with the complexity of chemistry, language, formulas, and the increased technology that's necessary in your more advanced lab work. And it just seems like your difficulty rises exponentially as you go up the chemistry programs. How do you handle that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a huge problem. One of the courses we were offering in the spring is an instrument analytical course. That's all hands-on with high-tech instrumentation that you can't show a YouTube video how to run or how to. And so a lot of that was put off. Some of it was simple dry labbed, given data to work up. Some of it was the actual running of the machines was put off till summer or even this fall when the students were actually back on campus. But no, that's why we really can't do a semester full of remote labs. We can do one or two, just as to fill in those weeks if we have to. But and that's why we're sweating out this semester. We're far enough in that it's like there's no going back right now. We need to finish this out in a face-to-face manner for those laboratory courses.
Is there any thinking that since this might last another 6 to 9 months, that you're almost going to lose a whole year of knowledge base, and that, what do scientists do who need to have people who have a very solid foundation that's possible during a normal academic year that we're not having? I mean, is there going to have to be some allowance for the gaps in understanding and in practical hands-on experience?
Yes, and the American Chemical Society has, we have an accredited degree from the American Chemical Society, and they have specifically stated that accreditation will allow a lot of this kind of, remote learning that they would not have in the past. You are required to do X number of laboratory hours in chemistry to have this accredited degree. So they have come out and said, we're moving the goalposts a little bit, but just for this one particular year. Now, I'm thinking they may have to do this longer, but it's not good. I mean, I want them to have the content.
Jim Harmon?
Yes. And I'm not saying, the students at this place are fantastic. You have a certain subset, as you do everywhere, that happens. The problem is when you give that opening where they know you can't so check on them. The students who are basically honest are sitting there going, if I'm honest, I'm going to do worse. I'm going to do on average worse than the person that's cheating. And so it sort of forces that whole thing and into that where everyone is doing it to a certain extent. Now we can get around that a little bit. You can do real short, condensed tests where they just don't have time to look up enough stuff. And that helps. It does not do away with that problem. And this is why if online courses don't work, online courses are great for reaccreditation or general knowledge, but an online course where the students are allowed to do what they want, you cannot expect them to get the content.
May, I think you had a question?
A question and a comment. My comment is your administrative assistant is my granddaughter,
Wow, Taylor, she's awesome.
Taylor. And my question is there anything that either in the chemistry department or campus-wide that you've learned out of all of this process that might be something that you would choose to continue with even after the COVID crisis is over?
Yes, I think that what we're doing currently is going to become the norm in terms of having a Zoom component that is recorded. And this is something that, you know, it's funny that the administration has wanted the faculty to move to at least some degree of an online component for years. And the faculty have been a bit recalcitrant to move in that direction. Well, we had to. The COVID meant we had to move in that direction. And I think we all know now, at least, how to do this reasonably, how to record, how to edit videos, how to make YouTube videos, post them, you know, to the extent where that will become the norm now. So the field has changed. The playing field has changed.
Tom? Tom Nancy?
Yes, Tom Nancy here. Kent, how do you deal with your advanced undergraduate students and graduate students who are involved in critical research studies at the bench amongst themselves or also with faculty members? Has that gone unimpeded, or have you had to make major changes in their progress?
It's the nice thing was that the lockdown did not include the research labs. We had we were allowed to keep our research labs open. The graduate students and the upper level undergrads who wished to stay around and continue the research were allowed to. They tried to implement some basic, social distancing options. One of those was sometimes they would have, some students would come in the mornings and work, and some would come in the afternoon and work. So there wasn't quite as many in the laboratory at any one time, but basically it was a small number that was left in the building, but we were allowed to continue that.
Bill?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. As a former community college instructor, I taught American government and paralegal courses. I decided that because of the non-traditional students we had, that I gave take-home tests, open book tests. And those tests were much harder than a test you would take in a classroom setting in a limited period of time. And I thought overall those worked out good. Those are humanity type courses, and I don't know if any of that could be transferred to a physical science type modality.
Yeah, some people have used that option. It has its drawbacks. The one thing you have to watch for then is it's easy to get a lot more information from the internet now, and that happens all the time. Plagiarism. And I don't want to sound negative here. Like I said, our students are pretty awesome, but it opens up a different can of worms, we'll say. But I agree that is an option, that it forces them, if they take the time to do it themselves, it forces them to go through the content. And that's really what we're trying to do here, right? So.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Ken?
Yeah, thanks so much again for the presentation. Learners come in different styles. They prefer different ways of learning. I guess I'm curious if you've had feedback from some students who have actually appreciated this shift in learning approach.
Yes, you are exactly right. I've had students who just come up on both sides, the ones who are meeting face to face and saying, thank you. I don't have the discipline to do this unless I come to class. But I also have the remote ones that said, I love being able to do this on my own schedule. And it's really a mixed bag. I mean, I have some of my remote students are doing the best in my classes. Some of them are doing the worst as well. That's what I've found. You get at the remote end, you get the full range of the students. The face-to-face ones, they're much that range of grades is much narrower. But no, you're exactly correct. There are some who do not need to sit down in class with me up front, talking. They can still get the content and get it well.
Lee?
In my teaching, I was a high school level chemistry and physics teacher. I felt like a lot of my learning took place with the homework. I gave probably more homework than anybody else in my building. And the homework was the basis of the learning, as well as the lectures. The textbooks were fairly minor references, but the lectures were the basis for understanding the homework, and the homework was just constant. And so I don't know on the college level to what degree that homework, where you have to think through things, you have to process what was given to you by the lecture and by whatever reading and understanding, and by conferring with your classmates. In fact, I encourage kids to do their homework together, because for me, like in college, I was constantly asking some of my roommates, how do you solve this problem? What's the formula? What's the technique? What's the general principle? And so to what degree is that happening or not happening at the college level during this horrible period?
Yeah, well, it's course dependent, of course, but I do the same thing in my current class. One of my spring semester courses is really heavy on homework. It's necessary for them to do probably at least 2 hours a day, maybe 3 of homework to stay up. So
Mine too.
yeah, so that's really good. Not all students can do that. So we lose more than we maybe should, or we would like to, by doing it that way. But it is a way to, once again, force content knowledge on them, force the discipline that they need. I need that discipline, in my life, and so that's really the whole idea here, and then being able to assess them. Correct.
Right. And for me, the assessment was critical because I knew they could cheat on the homework. In fact, I expected, maybe a quarter of every answer turned in was not their own answer. It was
Right.
a copied answer that they didn't understand. But my great break against that was I knew my assessments were going to be pretty rigorous. I had different versions of tests. I gave quizzes and tests constantly. So anybody who cheated very much on their homework couldn't pass the test very well. So there was that natural check, but you're saying that it's harder to test the validity of somebody with remote learning through testing. So I had an advantage that you don't have.
Jim Harmon?
Yeah, I can talk to you about that from two perspectives. One is like I said, I have a daughter in the 8th grade. So I'm doing this remote thing with her at the same time as I'm doing remote learning with my students. And let me tell you, we at the university, we are not as technologically advanced as we should be, but we make the MCPS system look really bad because they can't seem to do the most basic remote learning. And I'm honestly, I mean, this is a whole nother subject, but I'm just livid about how poorly they have done remote learning. And like I said, it's not this subject, and who knows, maybe it's just my particular daughter's school, but you are exactly right. She does her homework in 10 minutes for the week. And I have to go back and do, Khan Academies with her for her math. I have to do, the social studies and geography things that the teachers should be doing this. Everyone I have seen so far has been pretty inept with remote learning. And everyone I've talked to says the same thing. But that's just from, one example. We actually do it fairly well.
First Tom, then Maritza.
Yes, Ken, I'd like to make a quick comment about cheating at the college level. We have a granddaughter who goes to the University of Arizona. She's currently at her home taking all her courses remotely. And she indicated in the first week or so of classes, and they're not science classes, she's not a science major. She said there are actually ringleaders in some of the classes that contacted brought them all together, say in remote fashion, Zoom or whatnot, and they were plotting how they were going to cheat as a class. And so she was really taken back. How is she going to compete? She wants to be honest, but at the same time, you got a number of kids that are buying into it, which makes it, as you indicated, terribly difficult on the students, even the honest ones, because of the ultimate pressure placed on them for grades.
Yeah, and I mean, remember, a lot of our students go on, they're wanting to get into medical school or dental school or whatever. So, that GPA is important. Where they sit in the class is important. And so there's a lot of pressure to get as good a grade as they can using whatever they need to. And yet these are, like I said, some of the best students, most ethical as well, but it almost forces you to.
Maritza?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm so sorry I had to take a work call, so I missed a little bit of the end. And if I'm being repetitive, excuse me. First, I'll echo your sentiments about MCPS. I have a 3rd grader, and we're doing more work than I feel like we should be, to be honest. But I'm wondering, you talked about getting into grad school and med school and things like that. And I'm wondering if you think there will be a different set of expectations for this group of students, not only in that arena, but even for high school students trying to get into college. I mean, when you have a whole semester that was remote, and I know a lot of schools did pass fail, what is that going to look like? And will there just be this weird bubble of different expectations?
Yeah, I mean, there already is a change. I mean, they are not requiring ACT or SAT scores, for instance, to get into college. They're not requiring GRE scores to get into graduate school. So this has already been initiated, this bubble, as you call it, because that's actually a good term, this academic bubble of students coming through that are maybe every bit as good as anyone that's come out, but you won't be able to tell, because they won't have the assessments associated with that, with that portion of their career.
Mary Ann, I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm kind of going from MCPS too, because I have 3 grandchildren that are there, and I go up on Mondays when they don't have school, and the kindergarten, we do her homework, which is probably doesn't even take us, half an hour, and then she has to do something on the computer. And I find that when she does her lessons on the computer, she tends to just wants to get it done with so she can go play. And then the other two, they go Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then they have the other times where they do have classes to do on the computer. My granddaughter is very conscientious. She loves school and she really takes her time. But my grandson, I think he likes to go a little fast so he can do other things because they have so much time on their hands, and then they get bored. But then their mother is a teacher, and then she looks over my grandson's works and she'll say, this is not acceptable. You need to take time. But how many other, parents have the time, or even have someone that, that's a teacher that's going to do that? So I think there's a lot that's lost in all that time that they're not in school.
Yeah, my fear is that you're going to have a whole generation with a lost year because of, an inability to do remote learning on a even a halfway basis. I mean, I'm saying what we're doing at the university is getting the entire content across to the students, but like I said, compared to MCPS, we're awesome. I hate to ring our own bell, but it's night and day.
Right, and they only get certain classes for the junior high, so they're missing a lot of classes, other things they need to know too.
Well, I think they're doing block learning, aren't they, at the middle school level?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Eventually, they'll get all the classes, but in bits and pieces.
Right.
Now, I was a little bit concerned and surprised that band, quote unquote, was considered a class.
And
as opposed to something extra.
Oh, band hasn't started yet, and I think that's the other thing that's so bad about COVID is that we are missing some of those opportunities, which kind of round out, your education. But
I think it depends which group you're in. My grandson has already done band. It was one of his 2 classes in the first block.
Oh, yeah, my granddaughter hasn't yet, so she's
scratching my head.
So she's waiting.
Lee, you had a question or a comment?
Because it's possible some of this remote learning will continue into the future, even after this pandemic is over, and even for the more immediate time frame. Is anybody working on the technology of making assessment so that it can't be cheated? So that, with a technology that knows it's you doing it by fingerprints or iris patterns or something that goes directly to, some kind of automated system so that only a given person can be answering the questions and the instructors can be certain that nobody else is doing it. Is anybody even thinking about that?
Yes, they are trialing some software here where they normal Zoom proctoring is seeing the students just like we're seeing each other, right? So right. Each proctor might have 20 students. They see you sitting there. They can't see your computer screen. They can't see, where are your hands? Where are
right.
you? You could have someone just off screen, writing numbers and showing you, So some of this new software allows you to see what is going on their computer screen as they're answering the questions. So it's not just seeing them, it's seeing their computer as well. But I mean, there's still limitations to that. So there's just I do all of my testing this semester face-to-face. I go up into rooms, I proctor it myself. And the great thing about social distancing is there's no way they can even look at their neighbor's paper because they're 6 foot away. So it's actually, in that sense, it's working, that assessment's working really good. But
That's good.
we've got instructors with 400 students. You cannot do that.
Wow.
I got 40. I'm lucky.
hmm I was lucky enough, I had 2 and sometimes 3 different versions of a test. So you may or may not even know what your neighbor had. Or I had tests with 100 questions and they only had to answer 20 and it was a different set of 20 from somebody else sitting next to them. So I tried to stack the odds against them because the assessment is the key. That's the only true way of knowing whether somebody's learning anything is a rigorous assessment. And I'm sure my system wasn't 100% foolproof, but I raised the ante so hard that it'd take 10 times more effort to cheat than to learn the material.
Right.
Okay, good. Are there any more comments or questions? We've kind of got to the end of the hour. Richard? You've got to-
Unmute.
Here I am. I had to unmute. But I want to thank Kent for the talk. And since Missoula County Public Schools have not come in so well, I'd like to comment. My son is teachers and coaches at Frenchtown High, and I've been really impressed with what they have done. They had a lot of thoughtfulness and they've had good leadership, and it's working pretty well there. I have 2 grandkids that are in college, one at University of Utah and one at Oregon State. And Oregon State seems to be doing a little better than Utah. So I just wanted to make those comments, and thanks again, Kent.
Yep. Thanks, Dick.
Okay, Ken, thank you very much. I
Thank
think we
you.
all enjoyed it.
It's been nice talking to you.